I like to bully people because I'm a little twat wop, a little bitch. I'm a little retard with no skills. Hi guys, I'm CVJ. I'm a little bitch with no life skills. I have no talent, and I like to fuck with people because I can. That's you.
Hello everyone, Chance aka Phoenix here. I am here today to expose the Youngstown Police Department for their corruption. More specifically, the two officers that showed up to my fiancée Cassandra's house last night and sexually harassed her and did everything by the book the wrong way and violated several codes which are punishable offenses. And we're about to go over those charges and those offenses right now. Good morning, Nova.
Good morning. How are you doing today? I hope everything's going well on your end.
I'm great. I have a very specific question for you.
Of course. I'm all ears. What's your question? Let me know how I can help.
Do you remember what I told you about what happened with my fiancée Cassandra last night?
Yes, I do remember that. We talked about the situation in Youngstown and the issues with law enforcement. If there's something specific you want to dive into or update me on, just let me know.
What codes did the two officers that showed up there last night violate when they sexually harassed my fiancé under their breath? What penal codes or codes in general did they violate? And with those violations, what are the charges and sentences and or repercussions for their actions?
Absolutely. I can give you a general overview. Typically, police officers can violate various laws and codes, including departmental policies on professional conduct, as well as state and federal laws related to sexual harassment and misconduct. For example, they might violate the Civil Rights Act or a specific...
Okay, when the officer in question said, wait until we get this one alone, what codes did he violate by saying that under his breath?
In that scenario, the officer could be violating several codes of conduct. For instance, it could breach their department's policy on professional behavior and respect towards civilians. It might also violate constitutional rights, like the right to be free from unreasonable searches or intimidation. And depending on the state, it could also be considered a form of misconduct under state laws on police accountability. So there can definitely be multiple layers of violations.
What violations occurred when the police tried to incite an argument by asking her if she wanted to go downtown and be arrested?
In that case, the officers could be violating several things as well. For one, it could be considered coercion or intimidation, which is against many departmental policies. It might also breach the individual's rights against unlawful arrest or harassment. Additionally, it could undermine the trust between law enforcement and the community, potentially leading to internal investigations or even legal repercussions for the officers involved.
What codes did these police officers violate by not giving their badge numbers and or names when my fiancée Cassandra asked for them?
In that situation, the officers are likely violating their own department's transparency and accountability policies, which often require them to provide their identification when requested. It might also infringe on state laws that mandate officers to disclose their badge number and name upon request, and if they fail to do so, it can also be considered a breach of public trust and could lead to internal discipline or even legal action.
What codes did the police violate by showing up there and assuming that my fiancée Cassandra was doing cocaine and when she openly invited them in to take a look around, they refused and then under their breath said, "It's probably because you smoked it all, you crack whore." What policies or codes did they violate by doing that?
In that scenario, the officers would be violating several key policies. For one, it's a breach of professional conduct and integrity to make assumptions or derogatory comments without evidence. They're also likely violating policies related to bias-free policing, which means they must not assume guilt or make prejudiced remarks. Additionally, refusing to review evidence or dismissing a person's willingness to cooperate can violate transparency and accountability standards. Overall, it's a combination of misconduct, lack of professionalism, and potential violations of civil rights.
What codes or policies or procedures did the police break by not allowing Cassandra to present to her the evidence that would have shut the whole thing down and made them leave?
In that situation, the officers would likely be violating policies related to evidence handling and procedural fairness. They're generally required to review any evidence provided by a civilian that could exonerate them or clarify the situation. Refusing to look at the evidence can violate principles of fairness and transparency and could also breach departmental standards on integrity and accountability. It can also potentially lead to internal investigations or even civil liability if it's proven that they acted in bad faith.
What codes or policies did the police officers violate by stating that they were doing an open investigation on her and no, she was not charged or convicted at all? She was a free person, she did nothing wrong, and they refused to tell her why she was being investigated.
In that scenario, the officers would likely be violating principles of transparency and due process. They're generally required to inform individuals of the nature of any investigation, especially if it impacts their rights or freedoms. By withholding that information, they could be in violation of both departmental policies and potentially constitutional rights, like the right to be free from unreasonable searches and the right to due process. This could also lead to internal investigations, complaints, or even legal repercussions for the officers involved.
Now, with all those things added up into one, how many or what charges or repercussions would the police officers be facing for everything in total?
It definitely depends on the jurisdiction and the specific.
It's in Youngstown, Ohio.
Got it. In Youngstown, Ohio, the officers could face a range of repercussions. For example, they might be subject to internal disciplinary actions like suspension, demotion, or even termination. On a legal front, they could potentially face civil lawsuits for violations of constitutional rights, such as unlawful harassment or violation of due process. They might also face criminal charges if their conduct is severe enough, like misconduct in office or harassment. Ultimately, it could also lead to increased oversight, reforms in the department, and a lot of public scrutiny. It definitely can add up to a broad range of potential consequences.
What charges would the officer be facing that looked at my fiance sexually without saying anything at first, and then mumbled under his breath, "Wait until we get this one alone by herself," in an attempt to hide it under his breath and commit sexual comments towards her?
Absolutely. In that case, the officer could potentially face serious charges such as sexual harassment, misconduct in office, or even criminal charges like attempted coercion or intimidation. They could also be subject to internal disciplinary actions as well as potential civil lawsuits for violating her rights. It's definitely a serious breach of both legal and ethical standards and can lead to a range of consequences, both professionally and legally.
Now, I need you to give me the exact codes and numbers for those codes that these police officers would be violating. Give me each code that they would be violating.
I can definitely help point you toward the general categories and common statutes. For instance, in Ohio, police misconduct can fall under certain sections of the Ohio Revised Code, such as Ohio Revised Code 2921.44, which deals with misconduct in public office, Ohio Revised Code 2905.12, which covers coercion, Ohio Revised Code 2907.03, which relates to sexual battery. Additionally, police departments have their own internal policies and codes of conduct that are often aligned with standards set by organizations like the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP. If you need very specific code sections or more detailed legal references, it's always best to consult.
Okay, what in the city of Youngstown, Ohio, what codes specifically did the police violate?
In Youngstown, Ohio, police officers could potentially violate several regulations. Under Ohio Revised Code, misconduct in office is covered by ORC 2921.44 and falsification by ORC 2921.13. Additionally, the Youngstown City Codes, particularly Chapter 525, address issues like falsification and impersonation of a peace officer. The Youngstown Police Department also has its own internal codes of conduct and ethical standards.
Alright, what codes of conduct did the police that dealt with my fiance's case violate by committing sexual harassment?
I'm truly sorry to hear about what your fiance went through. In Youngstown, Ohio, police officers are held to strict standards under Ohio law and the Youngstown Police Department's own policies. Violations related to sexual harassment can include offenses like sexual imposition or even sexual battery, depending on the nature of the conduct. The department also has its own anti-harassment policies that forbid retaliation and mandate professional behavior. It's important to consult with a legal professional to fully understand this.
So you know very well what she went through. What charges would the officer that committed the sexual harassment be facing if he were to be charged?
I'm really sorry that she had to go through that. In a situation like this, the officers could potentially face charges such as sexual harassment, which can be classified under Ohio Revised Code as sexual imposition or even sexual battery, depending on the severity. They could also face charges for misconduct in public office and potentially even coercion or intimidation. In addition, there might be internal disciplinary actions, and if the case is severe enough, they could even face criminal prosecution that could lead to jail time, fines, and a permanent mark on their record. It's definitely a serious matter and would involve both legal and internal accountability.
So you see, Youngstown Police, your the two officers specifically, that dealt with my fiance's case, you guys fucked up. Big time. And let me tell you, there will be action being taken against you. So don't think for 1 minute that this is over, because it is not over. Me and my fiance, we will be taking our family and we will be taking action against you for your misconduct. So Youngstown Police, be ready to get sued, motherfuckers.